Martha and her 3 starving children were abandoned by an entire town, left to freeze in the bitter Dakota winter until a gruff widowed rancher reluctantly offered them shelter. As their temporary arrangement transforms into something deeper through blizzards and dangers, will Martha find the courage to claim the family she never expected to have? Blood-red sunset painted the snowy Dakota plains as Martha Wilkins stumbled forward, her breath smoking in the freezing air. A broken wagon had forced them off the stagecoach miles back. Now death stalked them with icy fingers as night approached. "Mama, I can't feel my toes," whispered 7-year-old James, his freckled face pinched blue with cold. Martha hoisted little Rose higher on her hip, the 4-year-old's weight growing heavier with each step. 9-year-old Sarah trudged beside them, clutching their only bag of possessions. "Look, lights ahead," Sarah suddenly pointed, her voice cracking with hope. Through swirling snow, the dim glow of Coldridge appeared like a miracle. Martha's heart leaped. The newspaper advertisement promising work for a skilled seamstress had been their salvation after her husband Daniel's coughing sickness carried him to an early grave. 3 months of selling their Chicago belongings had barely covered the journey west. A wolf howled somewhere in the darkness behind them. James grabbed Martha's skirt, trembling. "They won't come near town lights," Martha assured him, though fear clawed at her own chest. She'd heard stories of wolf packs growing bold during harsh winters, following the scent of weakness. The main street of Coldridge appeared deserted as they stumbled between weathered buildings. Martha banged desperately on the door of a shop with a lamp still burning inside. "Please, we need shelter." Her knuckles left bloody smears on the wood. A curtain twitched, revealing a woman's face. Their eyes met briefly before the curtain dropped. No door opened. Martha tried the next building and the next. At each one, faces appeared briefly in windows, then vanished. No one welcomed them. "Why won't anyone help us?" Sarah asked, her young voice bitter with dawning understanding. "They're scared," Martha whispered. "Bad winter makes folks turn inward." Little Rose began to whimper against Martha's shoulder, her small body shivering violently. Terror surged through Martha. She recognized the dangerous lethargy creeping into her youngest child's limbs. A squat building with town hall, painted above its door, stood at the street's end. Light glowed from its windows like false promise. Inside, warmth hit Martha's face like a physical blow. A portly man with spectacles looked up from a desk littered with papers, irritation crossing his features. "We don't provide overnight lodging," he said before Martha could speak. "Whatever you're selling, we don't want any." "Mayor Hollister?" Martha withdrew the folded advertisement from her coat pocket. "I'm Martha Wilkins, responding to your call for a seamstress. My letter was acknowledged 3 weeks ago." The mayor barely glanced at the paper. "Position's been filled. Mrs. Carter's daughter took it. Local girl." Martha's last hope crumbled. "But you replied to me. We sold everything to come here. Should have telegraphed to confirm before making the journey." He shrugged, already returning to his paperwork. "That's just good sense." "Please." Martha fought to keep desperation from her voice. "My children need shelter tonight. We have money to pay for rooms." Hollister's eyes flicked to the children, lingering on Rose's feverish face. For a moment, Martha thought she glimpsed pity. "Inn's full with railroad surveyors," he said finally. "Church sometimes takes in travelers." Down the street, white steeple. Hope flared briefly until they reached the church. Dark windows, locked door, with a sign nailed to the front. "Pastor Keller away until spring thaw. God bless." Martha's legs nearly buckled. The temperature had dropped with nightfall, wind cutting through their clothes like knives. Rose had stopped shivering, a dangerous sign. "Mama!" James tugged her sleeve, pointing toward the edge of town. "What's that building with the light?" A lantern glowed dimly from what appeared to be a stable or livery. Desperation driving her forward, Martha led her children toward it. The heavy wooden door was unlocked. Inside, the sweet smell of hay and the earthy scent of horses greeted them. Warmer than outside, though still cold enough to see their breath. "Just for tonight," Martha whispered. "Hide behind those hay bales. We'll figure something out tomorrow. She settled the children in a corner far from the door, piling loose hay over them for warmth. Rose's forehead burned against her palm, fever fighting against the cold. "Tell us about Papa's house again," Sarah requested softly, cuddling Rose between her and James. Martha stroked her daughter's hair. "Your papa was building us a fine house in Montana Territory, 2 stories tall with glass windows and a porch swing. Each of you would have had your own bedroom with—" The stable door crashed open, letting in a blast of frigid air that extinguished their whispered dreams. A massive silhouette filled the doorway, shoulders dusted with snow, the jingle of spurs cutting through the sudden silence. "Show yourselves." The man's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I can smell the smoke on your clothes. Step out now before I fetch my shotgun." Martha rose slowly, placing herself between the stranger and her hidden children. "Sir, please forgive the trespass," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "The town offered no shelter. My youngest is sick with fever. We only need—" "Town turned you out in this weather?" The man stepped fully into the lantern light, revealing a weathered face framed by a dark beard flecked with silver. His eyes, pale as winter sky, narrowed as they assessed Martha's threadbare coat and desperate expression. A child's cough from the hay pile made him stiffen. "How many?" he demanded. "3 children. My daughter Rose is burning with fever." The man cursed under his breath, running a gloved hand through his hair. For a long moment he stood silent, conflict evident in the hard lines of his face. Martha held her breath. Outside, the wind howled like hungry wolves. "Name's Jedediah Blackwood," he said finally. "Got a ranch 3 miles west. Can't leave young ones in this cold." Relief weakened Martha's knees. "We're grateful for any—" "Not offering charity," Blackwood cut her off gruffly. "Need house help anyway. Cook and clean until the stage returns in 2 weeks. That's the deal." Before Martha could respond, he turned toward the door. "My wagon's outside. Get your young ones. Storm's getting worse." As Martha helped her children from their hiding place, Sarah whispered, "Can we trust him, Mama?" Martha looked toward Blackwood's broad back as he checked his horses. The alternatives flashed through her mind. The locked church, the turned-away faces, Rose's burning forehead. "Sometimes," she whispered, lifting Rose into her arms, "we must trust because we have no choice." What Martha couldn't know as they climbed into Blackwood's wagon was how this desperate decision would change not just their survival, but the very meaning of home itself. Storm clouds swallowed the stars as Jedediah Blackwood's wagon creaked through deepening snow. Martha cradled Rose against her chest, the child's fever a frightening contrast to the bitter night. Sarah and James huddled under a buffalo robe, their eyes wide with uncertainty. "Will there be other children at your ranch, Mr. Blackwood?" James asked suddenly, breaking the tense silence. The question hung in the frozen air. Jedediah's shoulders stiffened under his heavy coat. "No children," he answered, voice rough as gravel. "Just me since my wife passed." Martha felt Sarah press closer against her side. The girl had always been sensitive to undercurrents of emotion. "How did she die?" Sarah blurted, then ducked her head at Martha's warning glance. Jedediah's hands tightened on the reins. For several heartbeats, only the crunch of snow beneath wagon wheels filled the darkness. "Fever took her 5 winters back," he said finally, "and our unborn child with her." Martha's arms instinctively tightened around Rose. What kind of man was this stranger they trusted with their lives? His gruff exterior revealed little, but that small crack in his voice when mentioning his wife suggested depths of feeling beneath. The wagon crested a small rise, revealing a 2-story log house nestled against the hillside. Lamplight glowed from a single downstairs window. A large barn and corrals stood nearby, dark shapes against the snow. "Home," Jedediah announced simply. He helped them down, carrying their meager bag while Martha managed Rose. The child whimpered with fever, her small face flushed despite the cold. The house's interior surprised Martha. She'd expected bachelor squalor, but instead found clean, if Spartan, furnishings. A stone fireplace dominated the main room, though its embers had died to faint coals. Handcrafted tables and chairs spoke of careful craftsmanship. Only a thick layer of dust suggested neglect. "Spare room upstairs," Jedediah said, moving to revive the fire. "Was meant to be. Doesn't matter now. Stove up there still works." While Jedediah lit lamps and built up the fire, Martha settled the children on a worn sofa. Rose's forehead burned against her palm. "Do you have willow bark tea?" Martha asked. "For the fever." Jedediah nodded toward a kitchen area. "Pantry's through there. Catherine kept medicines in the tin box." The name, Catherine, hung in the air between them. The first mention of the woman who had once made this house a home. In the pantry, Martha found the tin and soon had water boiling on the cookstove. While the tea steeped, she explored the kitchen by lamplight. Despite a layer of dust, everything was organized with precise care. Preserved fruits on one shelf, dried herbs hanging from ceiling hooks, cooking utensils arranged by size. "Your wife was very orderly," Martha observed when Jedediah entered. He ran a finger along the dusty counter. She believed everything had its proper place. The simple statement carried such weight of loss that Martha turned away, busying herself with the tea. Rose fought against the bitter medicine, but eventually swallowed enough to satisfy Martha. "Best get them settled upstairs," Jedediah suggested, bringing in wood for the bedroom stove. Winter nights dropped to killing cold. The upstairs room clearly hadn't been used in years. A wide bed with a faded quilt dominated the space. A rocking chair sat by the window, a woman's shawl still draped across its back. Most telling was the half-finished crib in the corner, its wood smooth from careful sanding but forever incomplete. Martha glanced at Jedediah, who stood awkwardly in the doorway, his eyes fixed on the crib. "Never could bring myself to finish it," he said quietly. "Or get rid of it." Martha touched the smooth wood rails. "My husband Daniel made cradles for each of our children. Said every baby deserved to start life in something made with love." A fleeting expression crossed Jedediah's face, recognition of shared understanding. Without further words, he lit the stove and left them to settle in. Martha tucked the children into the big bed, placing Rose in the middle where Sarah and James could share their warmth. The girl's fever still raged, but the willow bark tea would help her sleep. "Will we stay here, Mama?" Sarah whispered as Martha smoothed the quilt over them. "Just until the stage returns," Martha assured her. "Mr. Blackwood has been kind to offer shelter." "He looks scary," James murmured sleepily. "But his eyes aren't mean." From downstairs came the sound of cupboards opening and closing. Martha crept to the stairway landing and peered down to see Jedediah pulling items from his pantry. Flour, coffee, what looked like dried beans. Taking a deep breath, Martha descended the stairs. "Mr. Blackwood, I'd be happy to prepare something for supper. It's the least I can do after your kindness." He turned, clearly startled by her offer. "No need. Used to fending for myself." "I insist." Martha stepped into the kitchen, surveying the ingredients he'd gathered. "Though I see we share simple tastes in hard times." For the first time, a hint of softness touched Jedediah's weathered face. "Catherine used to say I'd eat sawdust if I thought it would keep me working another hour." Martha smiled despite herself. Daniel was the same. Once ate 3-day-old biscuits rather than stop to make fresh. A strange moment stretched between them. Two people connected by the ghosts of their lost spouses and the simple understanding of survival. The spell broke when Jedediah cleared his throat. "Coffee in that canister. Still good, I reckon." They worked in surprisingly comfortable silence, Martha mixing biscuit dough while Jedediah cooked beans with salt pork. The familiar routine of preparing food brought a semblance of normality to this strange situation. "The little one, her fever's bad?" Jedediah asked as they ate at the kitchen table. Martha nodded. "Started yesterday. The journey weakened her. Had a sister die of winter fever when I was young," Jedediah said, his voice matter of fact. "Seen it take strong men too." Fear clutched at Martha's heart. "I can't lose her." Something shifted in Jedediah's expression. Doc Peterson lives about 5 miles north. Good man, for all his grumbling. I'll fetch him at first light. We can't pay. Peterson owes me. Jedediah cut her off. Pulled his wagon from Spring Creek during last year's flood. Later, as Martha washed their few dishes, she found herself studying the stranger who had taken them in. His movements were efficient without wasted effort. His home, despite its neglect, showed signs of careful building. Tight corners, level shelves, sturdy furniture crafted by skilled hands. Your home is well made, she observed. Did you build it yourself? Pride flickered across his face. Every log. Took 3 years. Catherine designed it, wanted big windows to catch morning light. She had good taste, Martha said, noting the careful placement of windows that would indeed capture dawn's first rays. Jedediah's expression softened again at the mention of his wife. She made this place more than boards and nails. After she died, he trailed off, looking around as if seeing the dust and neglect for the first time. Guess I stopped noticing things. A cry from upstairs shattered the moment. Rose's fever had spiked, her small body thrashing against the sheets when Martha reached her. Sarah sat beside her sister, fear written across her young face. She keeps saying she's cold, but she's burning up, Sarah cried. Martha had used the last of the willow bark tea earlier. Panic rose in her throat as she tried to soothe Rose's delirious whimpers. Heavy footsteps on the stairs announced Jedediah's arrival. Without a word, he assessed the situation, then disappeared back downstairs. He returned moments later with a cloth-wrapped bundle. Catherine's special mix, he explained, unwrapping dried herbs and roots. For fevers worse than willow bark can touch. Martha stared at him. You've been holding these this whole time? His eyes met hers, defensiveness flashing briefly. Didn't know how bad the child was. These aren't for common chills, they're powerful medicine. Catherine learned from a Lakota healer during the first hard winter. While Martha cradled Rose, Jedediah prepared the medicine downstairs. The bitter-smelling tea he brought up steamed in the lamplight. Must get it all down her, he instructed. Won't taste good, but it works. Together they coaxed the medicine into Rose, the child fighting weakly against its bitterness. Afterward, Jedediah surprised Martha by placing a weathered hand on Rose's forehead, the gesture unexpectedly gentle from such a rough man. Fever's strong, he murmured. But she's stronger. Martha looked up, finding unexpected reassurance in his steady gaze. How can you know that? Jedediah's eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. Got your determination in her face. Saw it when you stood in my stable, ready to fight a stranger to protect your young. Something warm uncurled in Martha's chest. Not just gratitude, but recognition. This hard man with calloused hands understood the fierce love that had driven her westward after Daniel's death, seeking any chance to keep her children fed and sheltered. Get some rest, Jedediah said, rising from the bedside. I'll bring more tea in 2 hours. We'll take watches through the night. Mr. Blackwood, Martha called as he reached the door. When he turned, she continued softly, Thank you for not turning us away. A shadow crossed his face. Man who'd leave children in killing cold isn't worth the ground he stands on. After he'd gone, Martha settled beside her children in the big bed. Outside, snow began to fall again, tapping gently against the window glass. In this stranger's house, surrounded by remnants of his past sorrows, she found herself wondering what twist of fate had led them to his door on this of all nights. She couldn't possibly know then that the true storm, one that would test not just their survival but the very meaning of family, was still gathering strength on the horizon. Dawn broke with knife-sharp clarity over the snow-covered ranch. Rose's fever had finally broken in the early hours, her small body cooling as she slipped into peaceful sleep. Martha, exhausted from the night's vigil, stood at the bedroom window watching the sun paint the white landscape with gold. Downstairs, the clatter of pots announced Jedediah's presence in the kitchen. The smell of coffee drifted up the stairs, rich and inviting. Martha tucked the blankets around her sleeping children and made her way down to the main floor. Jedediah stood at the stove, his broad back to the doorway. He'd shaved, she noticed with surprise. The silver-flecked beard was gone, revealing a strong jaw and the faded scar that ran along his right cheek. "The medicine worked," Martha said, stepping into the kitchen. "Rose is sleeping naturally now." Jedediah turned, nodding as if he'd expected nothing less. "Catherine always said good medicine just needs time to do its work." He gestured toward the coffee pot. "Help yourself. Got flapjack batter mixed." The domestic scene struck Martha as oddly comfortable. This gruff stranger making breakfast in his long-neglected kitchen while her children slept safely upstairs. Just yesterday they'd been facing death in the snow. "Mr. Blackwood," she began. "Jedediah," he corrected, pouring batter onto the hot griddle. "Man who spends the night helping save a child might as well use his given name." "Jedediah." Martha tried again, the name unfamiliar on her tongue. "I want to discuss payment for your help and shelter." His shoulders stiffened. "Told you last night. Not charity." "Which is why I wish to pay my way," Martha insisted. "I noticed your home could use a thorough cleaning. The mending pile by your chair is substantial. And no offense meant, but your shirts have seen better days." Jedediah turned, spatula in hand, his expression unreadable. "You offering to work?" "I'm offering in exchange," Martha clarified. "Room and board for me and my children in return for cooking, cleaning, and sewing. Until the stage returns." Something like relief crossed his features. "Fair arrangement." The sound of small feet on the stairs interrupted their negotiation. James appeared in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep, eyes widening at the sight of flapjacks cooking on the stove. "Are those pancakes?" he asked, voice hushed with wonder. Jedediah's face softened. "Flapjacks. Best in Dakota Territory. According to the last cattle drive cook I outcooked in a fair contest." James edged into the room, drawn by the enticing smell. "Papa used to make pancakes on Sundays." A shadow crossed Jedediah's face at the mention of the boy's father. "Your pa was a good cook then. Smart man." "He was a lawyer," James said proudly. "But Mama says even lawyers need to know how to cook." Martha watched the exchange with interest. James rarely spoke of Daniel to strangers. The boy had withdrawn into silence for months after his father's death. "Your mother's right about that," Jedediah agreed, flipping a golden-brown flapjack with expert precision. "Man should know how to feed himself, no matter his calling." Sarah appeared next, leading a much-improved Rose by the hand. The younger girl's cheeks still showed fever's flush, but her eyes were clear and alert. "Look who's feeling better," Sarah announced, guiding her sister to Martha. Rose climbed into her mother's lap, small fingers playing with the buttons on Martha's dress. "I had funny dreams, Mama, about horses talking." Jedediah chuckled, surprising them all with the warm sound. "Fever dreams. Had those myself once after a rattler got me. Thought my horse was reciting Shakespeare." The children giggled, tension easing from their small frames. Martha realized how frightened they must have been. Strange house, strange man, their sister sick with fever. Breakfast passed in unexpected pleasantness. Jedediah proved to be a capable cook, and the flapjacks disappeared quickly under the children's eager appetites. As Martha washed dishes afterward, Sarah and James bombarded their host with questions about his ranch. "How many cows do you have? Do you have horses we can ride? Have you ever shot a bear?" Jedediah answered each question with surprising patience. 200 head of cattle. For horses, but none gentle enough for young ones. And yes, shot a bear once when it was coming after my winter stores. Made a fine rug. He pointed to the bearskin by the fireplace that the children had overlooked in yesterday's exhaustion. Martha noticed how Jedediah's eyes kept returning to Rose, who sat wrapped in a blanket by the fire, quietly playing with wooden spools she'd found in a basket. "Never thought I'd hear children's voices in this house," he said quietly when the older children had gone to explore the porch. Martha understood the unspoken meaning. This house had been built for a family that never came to be. "Children bring life to any home," she replied simply. After breakfast, Jedediah pulled on his heavy coat. Need to check the cattle in the north pasture. Storm might have scattered them. Will you be gone long? Martha asked, surprising herself with the concern in her voice. Back by midday, he assured her. Property's well stocked. Help yourself to whatever you need. Once Jedediah had departed, Martha organized her small workforce. Sarah was tasked with minding rows while Martha and James tackled the dusty main room. Like we used to do on Saturday mornings at home, Martha explained, handing James a dust cloth. Remember how Papa would inspect our work with his white gloves? James smiled at the memory. And he always found dust behind the bookcase. Together they swept, dusted, and polished. Martha was pleased to discover that beneath the layer of neglect, Jedediah's home was solidly built and well-appointed. The furniture showed craftsmanship far beyond frontier utilitarian needs. Someone, Catherine, she presumed, had cared deeply about making this house a home. In a corner cabinet, Martha discovered a set of china dishes, carefully wrapped in cloth. The delicate blue pattern spoke of Eastern refinement, oddly out of place in this frontier home. Pretty plates, Rose commented, peering around Martha's skirts. Yes, very pretty, Martha agreed, carefully rewrapping them. These weren't everyday dishes, she realized. These were special occasions only, perhaps waiting for celebrations that never came. Midway through their cleaning, Martha heard James shout from the front porch. Riders coming, Mama. Heart racing, Martha hurried outside. 3 men on horseback approached the house, riding hard through the snow. None was Jedediah. Get inside, Martha ordered, ushering the children back through the door. Stay away from the windows. The riders pulled up short of the house. The leader, a thin man with cold eyes, surveyed the smoke coming from the chimney and the swept porch with obvious surprise. Hello, the house, he called. Blackwood around? Martha stepped onto the porch, keeping the door ajar so she could retreat if necessary. Mr. Blackwood isn't here right now. Can I help you? The men exchanged glances. The leader's face split into an unpleasant smile. Well now, when did old Jed get himself a woman? Holding out on us, he's been. Martha's spine stiffened. We're just staying until the stage returns. Who should I say called? Victor Grantham, the man supplied, tipping his hat with mock courtesy. This here's my brother Eli and our friend Tucker. My father owns the biggest spread west of here. Martha had lived among enough men to recognize the posturing. I'll let Mr. Blackwood know you stopped by. Victor's gaze traveled over the house, lingering on the mended fence and freshly swept steps. Place is looking mighty homey. Been a while since any woman set foot here, not since the missus died birthing. The casual cruelty of his reference to Catherine's death made Martha's blood run cold. These were not friends of Jedediah's. Your message, Mr. Grantham? Martha prompted, wanting the men gone before the children grew curious enough to peer out. Just tell him Victor says the offer still stands. My father's a patient man, but patience runs out like everything else. Victor's smile never reached his eyes. Mighty cold winter to be so isolated. The threat hung in the air between them. Martha nodded once, face expressionless. I'll tell him. After the riders departed, Martha sank onto a kitchen chair, hands trembling slightly. Sarah emerged from the bedroom where she'd taken the younger children. Who were those men, Mama? They sounded mean. Martha composed herself. Just neighbors passing along a message. They weren't neighbors, Sarah said with 9-year-old certainty. Neighbors don't make you scared. Before Martha could respond, the back door opened and Jedediah stomped in, bringing a blast of cold air with him. One look at Martha's face told him something was wrong. What happened? He demanded, shrugging off his snow-crusted coat. Victor Grantham and 2 others stopped by, Martha said quietly. Left a message about an offer still standing, and a warning about being isolated in winter. Jedediah's expression darkened. Granthams don't waste time. He ran a hand through his hair, leaving it standing on end. Should have known they'd come sniffing around after the snow. Who are they? Martha asked. Land grabbers. Jedediah spat the words. Been trying to buy me out for years. Old man Grantham fancies himself a cattle baron, needs my water access. He glanced toward the children, who watched with wide eyes. Nothing for you to worry about. Grantham makes threats every winter. But Martha saw the concern behind his reassurance. In the harsh light from the window, she noticed for the first time the rifle mounted beside the door. Kept loaded, she guessed, and not just for wolves. What kind of danger had she brought her children into by accepting this stranger's help? Yet as James ran to show Jedediah their cleaning progress, the rancher's face softened in a way that made Martha's doubts recede. Whatever his battles with the Granthams, Jedediah Blackwood was a man who would protect his home, and those within it. The blizzard howled out of the northwest 3 days later, turning day to twilight at noon. Jedediah had sensed it coming that morning, studying the heavy clouds with practiced eyes. "Bad one brewing," he announced at breakfast. "Need to prepare." The day became a flurry of activity. Jedediah split wood until the pile beside the house stood taller than James. Martha filled every pot and bucket with water. The children were tasked with bringing preserved food from the root cellar. By mid-afternoon, the first fat snowflakes began to fall. An hour later, the wind rose to a banshee wail that made Rose cover her ears in fright. "How long will it last?" Martha asked as they gathered in the kitchen, watching white fury obliterate the world beyond the windows. 3 days, maybe 4, Jedediah replied, his face grim. "Had one like this in 79. Nearly didn't make it back from checking cattle." The implications hung in the air. How differently things might have gone had they still been in town, sheltering in the unheated church with its questionable roof. As darkness fell early under the storm's weight, Jedediah banked fires in both the kitchen stove and main fireplace. "Need to conserve wood," he explained. "Storm this size, we might be snowed in for a week after it passes." That evening, they gathered in the main room, drawn to the fireplace's warmth and light. Martha found Jedediah's mending basket and set to work on his shirts, while the children played a guessing game Jedediah taught them. "My father played this same game with me during the winter of 55, he explained, showing James how to give clues about an animal without naming it. Entertainment was homemade back then. Martha watched the interaction with interest. Jedediah, initially so gruff and distant, showed surprising gentleness with the children. He answered their endless questions with patience, told stories of frontier life that made their eyes grow wide, and even carved a small wooden horse for Rose from a scrap of pine. On the blizzard's second day, disaster struck. The temperature plummeted further, and a terrifying crack from the barn announced trouble. Jedediah, looking through a briefly cleared window, cursed under his breath. "Barn roof. Snow waits too much on the east side. Can it wait until the storm passes?" Martha asked, noting the white wall of snow beyond the glass. Jedediah's expression was answer enough. "Got 4 horses and 2 milk cows in there. Roof collapses completely, they'll die." He began pulling on layers, wool shirt over his everyday clothes, heavy coat on top, scarf wrapped around his face until only his eyes showed. "Take this," he said, holding out a coil of rope to Martha. "Tie one end to the porch post. I'll take the other end. Only way to find my way back in this white blindness." Fear clutched at Martha's heart. "Is there no other way?" "Not if you want those animals to live." Jedediah checked his gloves for holes. "If I'm not back in 20 minutes, I'm not coming back at all." The children watched wide-eyed as Martha tied the rope with hands that refused to stay steady. Jedediah nodded once, then stepped out into the howling white void, rope trailing behind him. Minutes crawled by like hours. Martha stood at the window watching the rope grow slack, then taut, then slack again as Jedediah moved toward the barn. After 15 minutes, the rope stopped moving entirely. Sarah appeared at Martha's elbow. "Something's wrong, isn't it?" Martha stared at the lifeless rope disappearing into whiteness. The rope had been Jedediah's lifeline back to the house. If he'd dropped it, "Watch your brother and sister," Martha decided, reaching for Jedediah's spare coat. "Mama, no," James cried, suddenly understanding. "You can't go out there." Martha knelt before her children. "Mr. Blackwood saved our lives by bringing us here. I can't let him die in that storm if there's anything I can do to help. But what if you don't come back either? Sarah whispered, voicing their shared fear. Martha hugged them fiercely. Bar the door behind me. Don't open it unless you hear my voice or Mr. Blackwood's. The storm's fury hit Martha like a physical blow as she stepped outside. The cold stole her breath, the wind trying to tear the coat from her body. Blinding snow made it impossible to see more than a few inches ahead. Only the rope, clutched in her gloved hands, connected her to safety. Hand over hand, Martha followed the rope toward the barn. The distance seemed impossibly farther than it had appeared from the window. Twice she stumbled and fell to her knees in snow that reached mid-thigh. Each time, the thought of Rose's feverish face and Jedediah's kindness drove her back to her feet. The barn materialized suddenly, looming darkly through the white veil. Following the rope around to the door, Martha found it partially blocked by fallen snow. Inside, the east section of the roof had indeed collapsed, allowing more snow to build deadly drifts among the stalls. Jedediah, she called, voice whipped away by the wind. A faint sound answered from the far end. Following it, Martha found Jedediah half buried beneath fallen timbers and snow, conscious but trapped. Blood from a gash on his forehead had frozen on his cheek. Damn foolish woman, he grunted when he saw her. Told you to stay put. And let you freeze? Martha knelt beside him, assessing the beam pinning his leg. You saved my children. Did you think I'd do any less? Together, they managed to shift the timber enough for him to pull free. His right leg wouldn't bear weight. Not broken, he insisted, but badly wrenched. The horses and cows, miraculously, were unharmed though frightened. Need to move them to the west stalls, Jedediah said through gritted teeth. Away from the damaged section. Martha, raised on her father's horse farm in Pennsylvania, approached the nervous animals with confident hands and soothing words. Under her gentle direction, they transferred all 6 animals to safety. You've handled livestock before, Jedediah observed as she secured the last stall door. My father raised Morgans before drink and gambling took everything, Martha replied, helping him to his feet. Animals are easier to understand than people, he always said. The journey back to the house became a nightmare of disorientation and exhaustion. The rope, their only guide, had been partially buried by fresh snow in places. When Jedediah stumbled for the 3rd time, unable to continue, Martha knelt beside him in the snow. Leave me, he ordered, voice barely audible above the wind. Get yourself back to the children. Martha leaned close, her face inches from his. My husband said the same before fever took him. I've watched one good man die already. I won't watch another. With strength born of desperation, she hauled him to his feet. The children are waiting. For both of us. They reached the house as Martha's strength neared its end. Sarah's face appeared at the window, then vanished. Seconds later, the door flew open. James and Sarah helped Martha drag Jedediah inside, where blessed warmth enveloped them. The children proved to be capable assistants, following Martha's instructions without question. James helped remove Jedediah's frozen boots while Sarah fetched blankets. Even little Rose brought a pillow from the bed upstairs, her small face solemn with purpose. You went after him like you went after Papa, Sarah observed quietly as Martha cleaned the cut on Jedediah's forehead. The simple statement carried weight that made Martha's hands still momentarily. The girl was right. She had fought just as hard to save Jedediah as she had battled to save Daniel from the fever. The realization unsettled her. That night, Martha kept vigil beside Jedediah's makeshift bed near the fire. His injured leg was propped on pillows, wrapped in cloths soaked with a pine-scented liniment she'd found in Catherine's medicine box. Outside, the blizzard continued its assault, but its howls seemed less threatening now that everyone was safe inside. You shouldn't have come after me, Jedediah said, breaking a comfortable silence. Martha looked up from her mending. Would you have left me out there? His eyes, reflecting the firelight, held hers. No. Then don't expect less of me, she replied simply. Something shifted in Jedediah's gaze. Respect, mingled with something deeper that made Martha look away first. "You're Catherine," she said, gesturing toward the daguerreotype on the mantel. She must have been a remarkable woman. Jedediah's face softened. She was. Educated back east. Could have had any life she wanted. Chose this wilderness instead. Said she'd rather build something new than inherit something old. "She helped you build all this," Martha said, understanding dawning. "Not just the house. Everything." Jedediah's voice roughened with emotion. 2,000 acres started as 100. Every fence post, every head of cattle we planned together. Martha thought of her own Daniel, brilliant in courtrooms but helpless with hammer and nails. They had been partners of a different sort. "It's a rare blessing to find a true partner in life," she said softly. "Rarer still to find one twice," Jedediah replied, his eyes holding hers for a meaningful moment before closing in exhaustion. Martha sat long into the night, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest as he slept. Outside, the blizzard began to wane, the wind's howl softening to occasional moans. Within the sturdy walls Jedediah and Catherine had built, their small group had found an unexpected shelter, not just from the storm, but from the coldness of a world that had turned them away. On the mantel, Catherine's photograph caught the firelight, her gentle eyes seeming to watch over them all. Martha found herself wondering what this woman she'd never met would think of them taking refuge in the home she'd created. "Thank you," Martha whispered to the photograph. "We'll take good care of him until he's well again." She couldn't have known then how those words, spoken in the vulnerable quiet of a storm-wrapped night, would echo forward to shape all their tomorrows. Ice crystals sparkled like diamonds on window panes as morning sun broke through clearing skies. The blizzard had finally exhausted itself after 3 days of fury, leaving behind a transformed landscape of smooth white drifts that buried fences and smaller outbuildings. Jedediah stood at the window, testing his injured leg while leaning on a crudely fashioned crutch James had helped make. His face, usually guarded, showed rare astonishment. "Never seen snow this deep," he murmured. "Not in 20 years. Martha joined him at the window, a steaming coffee cup in her hands. "Will the cattle survive?" "Most will. They're smart enough to find shelter against the bluffs." His gaze drifted to the barn with its partially collapsed roof. "Horses and milk cows made it thanks to you." Heat rose in Martha's cheeks at the quiet praise. Over the past 3 days of enforced closeness, something had shifted between them. A growing ease, punctuated by moments of awkward awareness when their hands accidentally touched or their eyes held too long. "Trapped," James announced dramatically, bursting into the room with 9-year-old excitement. "I tried opening the front door, but snow's blocking it completely," Jedediah chuckled. "Back door's clear enough. Storm always piles deeper on the north side." Little Rose padded into the room in her nightdress, clutching the wooden horse Jedediah had carved for her. "Are we stuck forever?" "Not forever, sweetness," Martha assured her, lifting the child onto her hip. "Just until paths can be cleared. Which means no stage will run for at least 2 more weeks," Jedediah added, his tone carefully neutral despite the flash of emotion in his eyes. Sarah, ever observant, glanced between the adults. "So we have to stay here longer?" "If Mr. Blackwood permits it," Martha replied, suddenly conscious of imposing further on his hospitality. Jedediah's answer came swiftly. "Place is big enough, and I still need that help we bargained for." Later that morning, while the children built snow forts in the sheltered yard behind the house, Martha found Jedediah at his desk in the small room off the main parlor. Ledgers spread before him. His expression was grim as he calculated figures. "Bad news?" she asked from the doorway. He glanced up, then gestured for her to enter. "Blizzard like this always means losses. Question is how many?" Martha approached the desk, noticing the neat columns of numbers in Jedediah's precise handwriting. "You keep detailed records." "Catherine's influence. She managed all this," he tapped the ledger, "while I handled the physical work. Perfect partners that way." "May I?" Martha asked, reaching for the ledger when he nodded permission. She scanned the entries, impressed by the orderly accounting. Her father's horse-breeding business had failed partly due to his chaotic bookkeeping. "You understand this?" Jedediah asked, surprise evident in his voice. "My husband taught me basic accounting, so I could manage household expenses during his court appearances." Martha traced a column with her finger. "These cattle prices seem low compared to Chicago rates." Jedediah leaned forward with interest. "That's my problem. Local buyers know I have limited options for selling. Railroads still 20 miles south." Martha studied the records further. "Have you considered approaching the Army contracts? Fort Randall always needs beef for the soldiers." Jedediah stared at her. "How do you know about Army contracts?" Daniel represented cattle suppliers in Illinois. Martha closed the ledger gently. "The Army pays premium prices but demands quality documentation, which you clearly have." For several moments, Jedediah sat in stunned silence. Then a slow smile spread across his face, transforming his stern features into something that made Martha's heart skip strangely. "A seamstress who understands cattle markets and bookkeeping," he said with wonder. "You're a woman of hidden talents, Martha Wilkins." Before she could respond, a commotion erupted outside. Voices raised in alarm. They rushed to the window to see Sarah running toward the house, her face pale with fright. Behind her, James stood protectively in front of Rose, facing two mounted men, the Grantham brothers. Jedediah grabbed his rifle from beside the door, his injured leg forgotten in the rush outside. Martha followed close behind, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Your brats are trespassing on future Grantham property," Victor called out when he spotted Jedediah emerging from the house. Jedediah positioned himself between the riders and the children. "Get back to your own land, Victor. These children are under my protection." Eli Grantham sneered, gesturing toward the damaged barn. "Looks like you can barely protect your own buildings, Blackwood. Shame if something happened to your house next." Martha gathered the children behind her, noting James's clenched fists and Sarah's protective arm around Rose. Pride surged through her despite the danger, her children standing brave in the face of bullies. "Your father's threats don't scare me," Jedediah replied evenly. "Never have." Victor's cold eyes shifted to Martha. "Found yourself a new wife already?" Catherine's barely cold in her grave. The cruel barb struck deep. Martha saw Jedediah's knuckles whiten on the rifle barrel. One wrong move could turn this confrontation deadly. "Mr. Blackwood has kindly offered shelter during the blizzard," Martha said clearly, stepping forward, "as any Christian man would do for a woman and children in need." Her deliberate emphasis on propriety caused uncertainty to flicker across Victor's face. He hadn't expected a direct challenge from a woman. "Just passing along Father's message," Victor said, gathering his reins. "His patience is wearing thin. After this winter, he's done negotiating." "Nothing to negotiate," Jedediah replied firmly. "This land isn't for sale. Not now, not ever." The Granthams wheeled their horses around, but Victor called back over his shoulder. "Winter's long, Blackwood. Accidents happen." After they'd disappeared over the ridge, Martha released a shaky breath. James immediately launched into excited questions. "Are they bad men? Why do they want your land? Can I learn to shoot a rifle like yours?" Jedediah ruffled the boy's hair, his expression softening. "They're men who want something that isn't theirs. And yes, when you're older, I'll teach you to handle a rifle properly." The casual promise, extending beyond their temporary arrangement, hung in the air between Martha and Jedediah as their eyes met over the children's heads. That evening, after the children were asleep, Martha found Jedediah at the kitchen table cleaning his rifle with methodical care. "Will they really try to harm you?" she asked quietly. Jedediah's hands paused. "Grantham's been trying to force me out for years. My land controls the best water access for 10 miles. Without it, his grand ambitions for a cattle empire are just dreams. And with Catherine gone, he thinks you're vulnerable," Martha concluded. "Been worse since she died," Jedediah admitted. "Like they're circling, waiting for me to break." His eyes met hers, haunted by memory. "Almost did, that first year without her. Martha placed her hand atop his without thinking. But you didn't. The contact, simple as it was, sent warmth spreading up her arm. Jedediah turned his hand to clasp hers, rough calluses against her palm. Having you and the children here, he began, then stopped, struggling for words. House feels alive again. Martha understood the feeling. This unexpected sanctuary they'd found amid danger and loss. But temporary sanctuaries could be the most painful to leave. The stage will come eventually, she reminded him gently, withdrawing her hand. Jedediah's expression closed. Of course, you have plans waiting in Montana. The mention of Montana struck Martha like a physical blow. She'd barely thought of their original destination in days. The dream of working as a hotel seamstress in Helena seemed distant and hollow compared to the odd sense of belonging they'd found here. James asked if we could stay, she admitted quietly. Hope flashed across Jedediah's face before he masked it. Children get attached easily. And adults? Martha asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Jedediah met her gaze directly. Some attachments form slowly over years. Others arrive sudden as blizzards. The moments stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Martha felt herself standing at a crossroads. One path leading to the uncertain future she'd planned, the other toward something unexpected but strangely right. Before either could speak further, a sound from upstairs broke the spell. Rose crying out in her sleep. Martha rose quickly, grateful for the interruption that spared her from confronting feelings she wasn't ready to name. As she climbed the stairs, Martha's mind whirled with confusion. She'd come west to build a new life for her children, not to entangle herself with a stranger fighting his own battles. Yet in just days, Jedediah Blackwood had become anything but a stranger. What would Daniel think of her growing attachment to this rough frontier rancher? The question haunted her as she soothed Rose back to sleep. Her husband had been educated, cultured, everything Jedediah was not. Yet she couldn't deny the strength and decency she'd discovered beneath Jedediah's gruff exterior. From the window, Martha could see the vast white expanse surrounding the isolated ranch house. The Grantham's threat echoed in her mind. By staying, she might be placing her children in danger. By leaving, she might be abandoning the first true sanctuary they'd found since Daniel's death. As moonlight painted silver patterns across the snow, Martha made a silent promise to herself. Whatever choice she made would be guided by one truth alone. Her children's well-being came before her own heart's uncertain yearnings. The sound of hammering echoed across the snow-covered yard as Jedediah worked on repairing the damaged barn roof. February sunshine, bright but cold, glinted off the snow around him as he balanced on a wooden ladder, nailing boards into place. From the kitchen window, Martha watched his steady progress while kneading bread dough with practiced hands. Sarah stood beside her, helping to prepare vegetables for the stew pot. Mr. Blackwood fixed James's sled yesterday, Sarah commented, her knife slicing through a carrot. He said James has clever hands, like an engineer. Martha smiled at her daughter's casual report. In the 2 weeks since the blizzard, Jedediah had spent increasing time with the children, teaching James basic carpentry, showing Sarah how to identify animal tracks in the snow, patiently answering Rose's endless questions about everything from chickens to stars. Mr. Blackwood is very kind to share his knowledge, Martha replied carefully. Sarah gave her mother a sideways glance that seemed too knowing for her 9 years. He looks at you the way Papa used to. Heat rushed to Martha's cheeks. Sarah, that's not appropriate conversation. But it's true, Sarah insisted. And you smile more now, even when you think no one's watching. Before Martha could formulate a response, the back door burst open. James rushed in, his face flushed with excitement. Riders coming, he announced. But not the mean Granthams. It's a fancy carriage with a man in a tall hat. Martha wiped her hands on her apron and stepped outside, shading her eyes against the winter glare. Indeed, a black carriage was making its way along the cleared path toward the house, pulled by a matched pair of gray horses. Not the Grantham style at all. Jedediah had already descended from the barn roof and stood waiting as the carriage approached. His hand rested casually near the pistol at his hip, a precaution he'd maintained since the Granthams' threatening visit. The carriage pulled to a stop, and a distinguished older gentleman in an expensive fur coat and stovepipe hat emerged. His silver beard was neatly trimmed, his bearing authoritative without being threatening. "Blackwood," he called jovially. "Thought I might find you intact after that monster storm." Jedediah's stance relaxed visibly. "Judge Parsons. Long way from Fort Pierre." "Circuit business," the judge replied, then noticed Martha standing on the porch. He removed his hat with a courtly bow. "Forgive my intrusion, madam. Judge Elias Parsons, at your service." Martha acknowledged the introduction with a nod, catching the slight widening of the judge's eyes as he noted the children peering around her skirts. His gaze moved between her and Jedediah with undisguised curiosity. "The Wilkins family was stranded by the storm," Jedediah explained quickly, "providing temporary shelter until the stage runs again." "Ah, Christian charity." The judge beamed, though his eyes remained shrewd. "Speaking of charity, might I impose on yours for a cup of coffee? These roads are brutal on old bones." Inside, Judge Parsons proved to be an engaging guest. He entertained the children with stories of frontier justice while Martha served coffee and fresh-baked biscuits. His eyes missed nothing, noting the tidy house, the children's ease with Jedediah, the unspoken communication that passed between Martha and their host. "Grantham's been busy while you've been snowed in," the judge mentioned casually as the conversation turned to local matters. "Telling everyone in Fort Pierre that you've abandoned your property. Even suggested your disappearance might need official investigation." Jedediah's expression darkened. "I haven't left my land in 5 years. He knows that." "Indeed." Judge Parsons sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "Which is why I found it curious. Then I heard rumors about the town of Coldridge turning away a widow and children during the worst storm in decades." Martha stiffened. The judge's keen eyes turned to her. "Small communities can be both the best and worst of humanity, Mrs. Wilkins. I take it Coldridge showed its worst." "They had their reasons," Martha replied diplomatically, aware of the children listening. "No good reasons to leave children in Killing Cold," Jedediah interjected, echoing his words from that first night. Judge Parsons nodded solemnly. "I quite agree. Which is why I've made a slight detour to inform Mayor Hollister that denying emergency shelter violates territorial statutes I personally helped draft." His eyes twinkled with satisfaction. His face turned the most interesting shade of purple. Despite herself, Martha laughed. The judge turned to her with grandfatherly kindness. "I've also taken the liberty of inquiring about that seamstress position. It seems Mrs. Carter's daughter lasted precisely 3 days before eloping with a cattle driver." Hope surged through Martha. "The position is open again?" "Indeed." The judge paused significantly. "Although, having seen your situation here, I wonder if your plans might have evolved?" The question hung in the air, loaded with implication. Martha felt heat rising to her face as she avoided Jedediah's gaze. "Our arrangement is temporary," she said carefully, "until the stage returns. Which I'm told will be next week," Judge Parsons supplied, watching them both with knowing eyes. "Marvelous timing, as I've been asked to preside over land claim disputes in Helena. I could ensure safe passage for you and your children, Mrs. Wilkins." The unexpected offer landed like a stone in still water. Martha felt rather than saw Jedediah's body tense beside her. "That's very kind," she managed to reply. After the judge departed, promising to return in a week for her answer, an uncomfortable silence fell between Martha and Jedediah. The children, sensing tension, retreated to the small bedroom that had become their playroom during the long winter days. "Helena's a good town," Jedediah finally said, staring out the window. "Growing fast. Good place for a fresh start." Martha's hands twisted her apron. "Yes, that's what the advertisement promised." Another long silence stretched between them, filled with words neither seemed able to speak. "I should check the north fence line," Jedediah said abruptly, reaching for his coat. "Been meaning to ride out there for days." "Jedediah," Martha called as he reached the door. He turned, his expression carefully neutral. What would you have me do? Pain flashed across his features. Not my place to say. I think it is, Martha insisted, gathering her courage. We've shared your home for nearly a month now. You've taught my son to whittle and helped my daughter name constellations. You saved Rose's life with Catherine's medicine. After all that, I believe you've earned the right to speak your mind. Jedediah's hand tightened on the doorframe. What I want doesn't matter. You came west with a plan. A good one. Plans change, Martha said softly. He took a step toward her, then stopped himself. Martha, I'm not a man who speaks easily about feelings. Catherine understood that about me. I'm not Catherine, Martha replied, a hint of fire entering her voice. I don't want to replace her in your heart. That's not possible, nor should it be. No, Jedediah agreed, his voice rough with emotion. You're nothing like her. She was raised gentle, sheltered. You're stronger, forged by harder trials. The unexpected praise caught Martha off guard. Then what holds you back from speaking plainly? Jedediah's eyes held hers, vulnerability and longing visible beneath his usual reserve. Fear that you'd stay out of gratitude or necessity, not choice. Fear that someday you'd regret binding yourself to a rough man with powerful enemies. Martha crossed the room until she stood before him. Do you believe I'm a woman who makes decisions based on fear or convenience? No, he answered immediately. You're the most determined woman I've ever met. Then trust my determination now, Martha said, her heart pounding. Ask me what you really want to ask me, Jedediah Blackwood. For a breathless moment, it seemed he might retreat behind his walls again. Then his weathered hand reached up to touch her cheek with unexpected gentleness. Stay, he said simply. Not as my housekeeper. Not temporarily. Stay permanently, you and the children. Help me make this house a home again. The words, so plainly spoken, held more power than any elaborate proposal. Martha covered his hand with her own, acknowledging the magnitude of what he offered. Not just shelter, but a complete reshaping of all their futures. The Granthams won't stop their threats, she said, voicing her greatest fear. Jedediah's jaw tightened. I've faced them alone for years. Together we'd be stronger. And the children? Taking on another man's children is no small thing. A rare smile softened his features. Those youngsters claimed pieces of my heart the first night in the stable. James has the makings of a fine rancher. Sarah sees everything with those wise eyes. And little Rose. He stopped, emotion overtaking him briefly. She sits in the spot by the window where Catherine used to sew. Feels right somehow. Martha felt tears welling in her eyes. Not from sadness, but from the unexpected perfection of finding home in the last place she'd expected. I need time, she said honestly, to be certain this is right for all of us. Take all the time you need, Jedediah replied, understanding in his eyes. The judge returns in a week. Until then, nothing changes. But something fundamental had already changed. Martha realized as Jedediah finally departed for his fence mending. The temporary sanctuary they'd found in emergency had somehow transformed into something far more precious, the possibility of permanent belonging. That evening, after the children were asleep, Martha stood alone in Catherine's sewing room. The treadle machine sat in the corner where Jedediah had shown it to her weeks ago, covered with a cloth to protect it from dust. With reverent hands, Martha uncovered the machine, a fine Singer model, expensive and well-maintained. Catherine's work basket sat beside it, still containing spools of thread and carefully folded scraps of fabric. What would you think of all this? Martha whispered to the absent woman whose presence still lingered in the house she'd helped create. Would you mind another woman caring for the home you loved? The man you loved? No answer came except the whisper of wind around the eaves. Yet somehow, as Martha ran her fingers over the smooth wood of the sewing machine, she felt a sense of permission, as if Catherine's practical spirit would approve of bringing life back to rooms left too long in mourning. From the bedroom across the hall came Rose's sleepy voice, calling for a drink of water. Martha responded automatically, moving toward her children's needs as she always had. In that ordinary moment of motherhood, clarity suddenly washed over her. This house needed children's voices. Jedediah needed a partner who understood both loss and resilience. And she, Martha, realized with startling certainty, needed the steady strength he offered without demands or conditions. Judge Parsons would return in a week, offering safe passage to the future she'd planned. But Martha was beginning to understand that sometimes the journey's purpose wasn't to reach the destination you'd imagined, but to find the place where your heart finally recognized home. Land Office confirms your boundaries exactly as claimed, Judge Parsons announced, slapping the official document onto Jedediah's kitchen table. His customary judicial solemnity was brightened by a satisfied smile. Every acre, every water right, legally yours beyond any challenge. Jedediah stared at the papers with their impressive seals and signatures. After years of Grantham's boundary disputes and threats, the validation felt almost unreal. Martha, standing beside him, squeezed his arm gently in silent congratulation. The judge had returned as promised, his carriage pulling up to the ranch house exactly 1 week after his previous visit. But this time he'd brought unexpected news. He'd made a special trip to the Territorial Land Office in Bismarck, taking Jedediah's original claim documents for official review. "Why would you do this for me?" Jedediah asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Judge Parsons' eyes twinkled beneath bushy white brows. "Let's just say I've had my fill of Silas Grantham's manipulations. Man tried to swindle my own brother out of his mining claim last year." He removed his spectacles, polishing them thoughtfully. "Besides, I've always believed that family land should remain with family." His emphasis on the word family was subtle but unmistakable as his gaze moved between Jedediah and Martha, then to the children playing outside in the winter sunshine. "Have you reached a decision about Helena, Mrs. Wilkins?" the judge inquired. "The stage departs tomorrow morning, and I've secured passage if you wish it." Martha felt 3 pairs of eyes turn to her, the judge's curious, Jedediah's carefully neutral despite the tension visible in his shoulders, and Sarah's sharp gaze from the doorway where she'd appeared silently, always attuned to adult conversations that might affect their future. "I have," Martha replied, her voice steadier than her racing heart. "We won't be traveling to Helena." Relief flashed across Jedediah's face before he masked it. Sarah disappeared from the doorway, her pattering footsteps suggesting she was rushing to share the news with her siblings. "I suspected as much," Judge Parsons said with satisfaction. "Territorial law has specific provisions for homesteads. Of course, certain formalities would need addressing for your arrangement to be officially recognized." The delicate reference to marriage hung in the air. Martha felt heat rise to her cheeks as Jedediah cleared his throat awkwardly. "One step at a time, Judge," he said gruffly. Parsons chuckled, gathering his hat and gloves. Of course. I merely mention it as a legal matter. Property rights and such." He winked at Martha. "Though I'd be honored to officiate when the time comes." After the judge departed with promises to return in spring, excited children's voices filled the house as Sarah, James, and Rose processed the news that they would be staying permanently. Their joy was tinged with questions. Would they have their own rooms forever? Could they get a dog now? Would Mr. Blackwood teach them to ride horses? Enough questions. Martha finally laughed, overwhelmed by their enthusiasm. "Mr. Blackwood and I need to discuss many things about these new arrangements. Like if we'll call him Papa?" Rose asked innocently, causing an immediate hush to fall. Martha glanced at Jedediah, whose face showed a complex mix of emotions. "That would be entirely Mr. Blackwood's decision," she said carefully. Jedediah knelt to Rose's level, his usually stern face softened. "That's a mighty important title, little one. One that's earned, not given. Your real pa was a good man who loved you very much. But he's in heaven now," Rose said matter-of-factly. "And you're here." The simple child's logic hung in the air between them all. Jedediah's eyes met Martha's over Rose's head, a silent question in them that made her heart turn over. "We have time to figure everything out," Martha told the children gently. "For now, knowing we're staying is enough." That evening, after the children were settled for the night, Jedediah and Martha sat before the fire, the enormity of their decision finally sinking in. The comfortable silence between them was broken by the distant sound of horses approaching. "Expecting visitors?" Martha asked, instantly alert to potential danger. Jedediah was already reaching for his rifle. "No. Stay inside." Ignoring his instruction, Martha followed him to the porch, where they could make out 3 riders approaching through the gathering dusk. The lead figure's distinctive silhouette sent a chill through Martha. Silas Grantham himself, flanked by his sons. "Blackwood," the elder Grantham called as they halted a respectful distance from the house. "Heard the circuit judge paid you a visit." Jedediah positioned himself slightly in front of Martha. "State your business, Grantham." Silas Grantham was an imposing figure despite his 60-some years, broad-shouldered with a silver-streaked beard and cold eyes that reminded Martha of his son Victor's predatory gaze. "No need for hostility," Grantham replied with artificial pleasantness. "Just came to discuss business. Man to man." Martha noted how his gaze slid over her dismissively, as if a woman couldn't possibly be part of important negotiations. The casual disrespect stiffened her spine. "Mr. Blackwood's business concerns me as well," she stated clearly. As his partner. Surprise flickered across the older man's face, quickly replaced by calculation as he reassessed the situation. "I see. Congratulations seemed to be in order then." His smile never reached his eyes. "All the more reason to consider my offer. A new family needs security, after all." "My land's not for sale," Jedediah replied flatly. Judge Parsons confirmed all boundaries with the territorial office. "Your claims have no legal standing." Anger flashed across Grantham's weathered face before he controlled it. "The railroad survey's coming through in April. They'll be looking for the best route west, and the most cooperative landowners." "Is that a threat?" Martha asked, stepping forward to stand shoulder to shoulder with Jedediah. "Simply a reminder that progress doesn't wait for stubborn men," Grantham replied. His cold eyes assessed the property, the repaired barn, the well-maintained house, the new sense of permanence visible in small improvements around the yard. "Railroad brings civilization. Civilization brings law. Law favors development. Law also protects rightful ownership," Jedediah countered. "Your threats worked better when I stood alone, Grantham. Those days are over." The declaration hung in the air between them, a line drawn not just around property, but around the new family taking shape within it. Grantham's eyes narrowed as he took in Martha's unflinching stance beside Jedediah, the evidence of children visible in the small sled propped against the porch rail, the unity that had replaced Jedediah's isolated vulnerability. "Every man has his price," Grantham said finally. "I'll find yours eventually, Blackwood." He gathered his reins. "Enjoy your domestic arrangements while they last." As the Granthams rode away, Martha released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "He's not giving up." "No," Jedediah agreed grimly. "But neither are we." Later that night, after checking that the children were asleep, Martha found Jedediah at his desk, reviewing the land office documents Judge Parsons had brought. "You're worried," she observed quietly. Jedediah looked up, the lamplight casting deep shadows across his face. "Grantham doesn't make idle threats. Railroad survey would give him new leverage." Martha settled into the chair opposite him. "Then we need allies beyond Judge Parsons. Who else in the territory holds influence?" Jedediah's expression shifted to one of admiration. "You don't scare easily, do you?" "I stopped having the luxury of fear when Daniel died," Martha replied simply. "Fear doesn't feed children or protect them." Understanding passed between them, recognition of how life's harshest blows had forged similar strength in both of them. "The Hanson family to the east," Jedediah said, shifting to practical matters. "Old friendship with my father. And Pete Miller, who helped survey originally. Lives in the mining camp 20 miles north." Martha nodded, mentally noting these potential allies. "We should invite the Hansons for Sunday dinner. Rebuild those connections." Jedediah stared at her with something like wonder. "Catherine always said the same. that neighbors were the best defense against hard times. The mention of his first wife no longer created awkwardness between them. Instead, Martha felt a curious kinship with this woman she'd never met, as if they shared a united purpose across time. "She was right," Martha said softly. "And so are you. Grantham's threats worked better when you stood alone." She reached across the desk to cover his hand with hers. "But you're not alone anymore." The simple truth hung in the air between them, not just a practical arrangement or convenient solution to both their problems, but something deeper taking root. Something neither had expected to find again after such profound loss. Jedediah turned his hand to clasp hers, rough calluses against her work-hardened palm. "We should discuss what the judge mentioned, about formalizing matters." Martha felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Are you asking me to marry you, Jedediah Blackwood?" A rare smile softened his stern features. "Doing a poor job of it, apparently. I was married to a lawyer who could speak for hours without saying what he truly meant," Martha replied, an answering smile tugging at her lips. "I find I prefer direct words, plainly spoken." Jedediah stood and came around the desk, still holding her hand. Though not a man given to grand gestures, the intensity in his eyes spoke volumes as he knelt before her chair. "Martha Wilkins, will you and your children join your lives with mine? Make this house a home again? Face whatever comes. Granthams, blizzards, and all else. Together." The simple, heartfelt proposal brought tears to Martha's eyes. Not the romantic words of poetry that Daniel had once used to court her, but something equally precious. Honest words from a man who meant exactly what he said. "Yes," she answered simply. "We will." From the shadows of the hallway came a small gasp and hurried whispers. Martha and Jedediah turned to find three small figures in nightclothes watching with wide eyes. Sarah trying to shush her siblings, James grinning broadly, and little Rose clutching her wooden horse. "Does this mean we can stay forever?" James asked hopefully. Jedediah's laugh, once so rare, filled the room with unexpected warmth. "Forever is a mighty long time, young man. But yes, that's the general idea." As the children rushed forward with excited questions and spontaneous hugs, Martha felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This unlikely sanctuary, found in desperate circumstances, had somehow become the home her heart recognized even before her mind understood. Outside, snow continued to blanket the Dakota plains, the same winter that had nearly claimed their lives now standing guard around the warmth they'd found together. April sunshine warmed the freshly turned earth as Martha planted Catherine's treasured rose bushes around the front porch. The winter's deep snow had protected the dormant plants, and green shoots now promised summer blooms. Sarah worked beside her, carefully patting soil around each transplanted bush. "Do you think Mrs. Catherine would mind us moving her roses?" Sarah asked, her 9-year-old face serious with the responsibility. Martha considered the question thoughtfully. "I think she'd be pleased to see them where everyone can enjoy them. Beauty should be shared." From inside the house came the sound of hammering, Jedediah and James working together to convert the small back room into a proper bedroom for the boy. Rose's happy chatter drifted through the open window as she supervised their work with the solemn importance of a 4-year-old. 2 months had transformed both the ranch and its inhabitants. The shared winter hardships had given way to spring's renewal and purpose. Jedediah, once so solitary and grim, now moved with the energy of a man half his age. The children had blossomed under his gruff but genuine attention, especially James, who shadowed the rancher's every move with devoted admiration. "Riders coming," Sarah suddenly announced, shading her eyes against the bright morning light. Martha straightened, automatically counting the approaching figures. 5 men on horseback, heading directly toward the ranch house. Her heart sank as she recognized Victor Grantham's distinctive gray stallion in the lead. Inside Sarah, Martha instructed calmly, "Tell Jedediah we have visitors." Rather than obeying immediately, Sarah studied the approaching riders with narrowed eyes. "That's not just the Granthams, Mama. The man with the brown hat is Mr. Hanson from the East property. And isn't that the sheriff with them?" Martha looked again, realizing her daughter was right. Sheriff Mills rode slightly behind Victor Grantham, his official badge visible even at this distance. The other riders included Silas Grantham, Eli Grantham, and indeed Jacob Hansen, their nearest neighbor to the east. The screen door banged as Jedediah emerged, rifle casually but visibly present in his hands. James peered anxiously from the doorway behind him. "Stay with your sisters," Jedediah told the boy quietly. "Keep them inside." The riders pulled up in the yard, an uncomfortable mixture of hostility and official purpose in their bearing. Sheriff Mills nodded stiffly to Jedediah, then to Martha. "Blackwood, ma'am. Sorry to disturb your morning, but Mr. Grantham has filed an official complaint regarding boundary disputes. As you can see, he's brought Mr. Hansen as witness to the original property lines." Jacob Hansen, a stocky man with kind eyes, looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Now hold on, Sheriff. I never agreed to witness against Jedediah. Silas just asked me to confirm the original survey markers." Victor Grantham's cold smile reminded Martha of a predator, which will prove exactly what we've been saying. The North Creek boundary was incorrectly recorded in Blackwood's favor. Jedediah's face remained impassive, but Martha could sense the tension radiating from him. Judge Parsons already confirmed all boundaries with the territorial office. "Got the paperwork inside." "Easily forged," Silas Grantham dismissed with a wave of his hand, "especially by a circuit judge with limited oversight." Martha stepped forward, anger overcoming caution. "Are you accusing a territorial judge of corruption, Mr. Grantham?" The elder Grantham's eyes flicked to her with dismissive irritation. "Stay out of men's business, woman. My wife speaks with my full authority in all matters," Jedediah responded immediately, his voice hard as iron. "You'd do well to remember that, Grantham." The simple declaration, the first time he'd publicly called Martha his wife before their planned wedding, sent warmth spreading through her despite the tense confrontation. Sheriff Mills, clearly eager to complete his uncomfortable duty, interrupted. "Look, we just need to ride to the north boundary and check the survey markers against the county records. Simple as that." "Then we'll do so," Jedediah agreed calmly. "But not with 5 men descending on my home unannounced, frightening my family." He turned to Hansen. "Jacob, you've known me 20 years. You helped my father drive his first herd to this land. Will you come with me and the sheriff to check those markers?" Man to man, neighbor to neighbor, the direct appeal to honor placed Hansen in an awkward position, visibly torn between old loyalties and the powerful Granthams. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "That seems fair." "Now wait just a minute," Victor protested, but his father laid a restraining hand on his arm. "Let them go," Silas directed with calculating patience. "The markers will speak for themselves." His cold eyes met Jedediah's. "We'll wait here." "Like hell you will," Jedediah replied evenly. "You'll wait in town or on your own property, not within a mile of my home or family." For a tense moment, it seemed Silas might challenge the directive. Then, with deliberate casualness, he gathered his reins. "Come, Victor, Eli. Let the inspection proceed without interference. We know what the outcome will be." As the Granthams turned their horses, Silas called back over his shoulder. "Sheriff, we'll expect your report by sundown." After they'd disappeared over the rise, Sheriff Mills exhaled heavily. "That family makes my job 10 times harder than it needs to be." "Thought you were married to Grantham's niece," Jedediah remarked, his tone neutral but pointed. The sheriff's weathered face reddened slightly. "Second cousin by marriage. Doesn't mean I enjoy being their errand boy." He straightened in his saddle. "Let's check those markers and be done with it." As the men prepared to ride out, Martha touched Jedediah's arm. "Should I come with you?" He shook his head. "Stay with the children. This won't take long." The confidence in his voice reassured her, though worry still churned beneath her calm exterior. Inside the house, Martha found all 3 children clustered at the window, wide-eyed with concern. "Are the bad men trying to take our home?" Rose asked, bottom lip trembling. Martha gathered the little girl into her arms. "No, sweetness. Mr. Jedediah has the proper papers that show this land belongs to us. The sheriff just needs to check some markers, that's all. But why did they bring so many men? James demanded, his 7-year-old face fierce with protective instinct. That's not fair. Sometimes people think having more people on their side makes them right, Martha explained, stroking his hair. But that's not how truth works. Sarah, ever perceptive, studied her mother's face. You're worried they might lie about the markers. Martha considered how to answer honestly without increasing their fears. I believe in Jedediah and in Judge Parsons who verified our claim. But yes, I'm concerned the Granthams might try to change the truth to get what they want. Then we need proof they can't argue with, Sarah declared with sudden determination. She turned to her siblings. Remember Mr. Jedediah's special box? The metal one under his bed. James nodded eagerly. The one with all the important papers? A plan began forming in Martha's mind. Sarah, you're absolutely right. James, help me move the kitchen stool. We need to reach the top shelf in Jedediah's closet. 20 minutes later, Martha sat at the kitchen table surrounded by documents spanning 20 years of Blackwood family history. Among them, she found exactly what she'd hoped for. The original survey map signed by both Jedediah's father and Silas Grantham's father 30 years earlier. The yellow document clearly showed the creek boundary exactly where Jedediah had always maintained it was. This proves Mr. Jedediah is right, James exclaimed, pointing at the signatures. It certainly supports our claim, Martha agreed. But we need to get it to them before the Granthams can cause more trouble. Sarah, who had been quietly thinking, spoke up. I know where they went. The North Creek bend with the 3 big cottonwood trees. Mr. Jedediah showed me the boundary markers there when we collected maple sap last week. Martha made a swift decision. Sarah, you'll stay here with Rose. Bar the door behind us. James and I will take the document to the creek boundary. But Mama, I want to help too. Rose protested. Martha knelt to her level. You are helping, my brave girl. Someone smart and strong needs to protect our home while we're gone. Satisfied with this important responsibility, Rose nodded solemnly while Martha quickly harnessed Daisy, the gentlest of Jedediah's horses, to the small cart. With James clutching the precious document in its protective oilskin wrapping, they set off toward the north boundary. The journey took longer than Martha had anticipated. Spring melt had turned sections of the trail muddy, forcing them to proceed carefully. As they approached the creek area, James suddenly pointed ahead. Look, Mr. Jedediah and the sheriff are arguing. Through the scattered trees, Martha could see 3 men on horseback near the creek bend. Sheriff Mills gesticulated emphatically while Jedediah stood firm, arms crossed. Jacob Hansen looked increasingly uncomfortable between them. The marker's been moved, Hansen was saying as Martha and James approached close enough to hear. That's not where it stood when old Tom Blackwood and Francis Grantham said it. I'd stake my reputation on it. Convenient memory after 30 years, the sheriff replied skeptically. The county record shows. We have the original survey map, Martha interrupted, bringing the cart to a stop beside them. Signed by both original owners. Surprise flashed across all 3 men's faces. Jedediah recovered first, striding forward to help Martha down from the cart. What are you doing here? He asked quietly, concern rather than anger in his voice. Being your partner, she replied simply, holding out the oilskin package. In all things, remember? The sheriff unfolded the brittle document carefully. His eyebrows rose as he examined the clearly marked boundaries and dual signatures at the bottom. This puts the creek boundary exactly where Blackwood claims, he admitted reluctantly. And these signatures match our county records. Hansen leaned over to examine the map. That's exactly right. I remember the day they signed it. I was just a boy, but my father brought me along to witness because he said it was important to see men settling differences honorably. The sheriff refolded the map with a heavy sigh. Silas won't be happy. Silas moved the boundary marker, Jedediah stated flatly. That's a criminal offense in this territory. An uncomfortable silence followed this accurate but potentially explosive accusation. The sheriff shifted in his saddle. Hard to prove who moved it, he hedged. But easy to prove where it belongs, Martha countered firmly. And to reset it properly with witnesses present. James, who had been watching intently, suddenly spoke up. Mr. Hanson, sir, did you bring your Bible with you? Papa always said important promises should be made on the good book. Hanson blinked in surprise, then slowly reached into his saddlebag. As a matter of fact, I did, son. Never travel without it. As the men reset the boundary marker to its proper position, Hanson held his family Bible while all three men placed their hands upon it, swearing to the marker's correct placement. The sheriff recorded the proceedings in his official ledger, noting the presence of the original survey map and the sworn statements. I'll file this at the county office, he promised, surprising Martha with his apparent integrity despite his Grantham connections. And I'll deliver the news to Silas myself. We'll come with you, Martha decided suddenly. All of us. Jedediah gave her a questioning look. She met his gaze steadily. We faced them together, remember? Not just today, but always. Understanding and pride flashed across his face as he nodded agreement. Later that afternoon, they all stood in Sheriff Mill's office in town as he officially informed Silas Grantham of his findings. Martha held Rose on her hip while James and Sarah flanked Jedediah, a united family against Grantham's cold fury. This isn't over, Blackwood, Silas threatened as he stormed toward the door. Railroad's still coming. I certainly hope so, Martha replied pleasantly. We have wool and beef to ship. Progress benefits everyone, not just those who try to steal what isn't theirs. After the Granthams departed, Sheriff Mills shook his head in reluctant admiration. Never thought I'd see the day someone stood up to Silas and won. He regarded Martha curiously. You're not what I expected when I heard Blackwood had taken in a widow and orphans. Few things turn out exactly as expected, Sheriff, Martha replied with a small smile. Sometimes they turn out better. As they left the sheriff's office, Martha noticed several townspeople watching them with undisguised curiosity. The same town that had once turned them away now whispered behind hands as they passed. The seamstress who had transformed the solitary rancher, the children who had brought life back to Blackwood land. Mayor Hollister, emerging from the mercantile, stopped short at the sight of them. His face flushed with the memory of that bitter night when he'd sent them into the killing cold. Mrs. Wilkins, he acknowledged stiffly. I understand congratulations are in order. Martha met his gaze steadily. They are indeed, Mayor. Judge Parsons will be performing our wedding ceremony next Sunday. You and your wife are welcome to attend, of course. The invitation, gracious yet pointed, left the mayor floundering for response. Beside her, Jedediah's lips twitched with suppressed amusement. You're a better Christian than I am, he murmured as they continued toward their wagon. Not better, Martha corrected gently. Just practical. We'll be neighbors for many years. Best to begin as we mean to continue. The wedding took place as planned, beneath the apple tree Catherine had planted years before. Judge Parsons presided with dignified joy, while half the county attended, some out of genuine goodwill, others from sheer curiosity. As Martha stood beside Jedediah in her freshly sewn blue dress, Sarah, James and Rose arranged around them like satellites, she marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From the brink of freezing to death in Coldridge's unforgiving streets to claiming a home and future on this beautiful, hard-won land. Do you, Martha Elaine Wilkins, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Judge Parsons intoned. Martha looked up at Jedediah, this stern, honorable man who had opened his home and heart when all others had turned away. The man who taught James to whittle, who braided Sarah's hair with surprising gentleness, who carried Rose on his shoulders to see hawk nests in high trees. I do, she answered clearly. And do you, Jedediah Thomas Blackwood, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do, Jedediah replied, his voice resonant with certainty. Judge Parsons smiled broadly. Then by the authority vested in me by the Dakota Territory, I pronounce you husband and wife. He winked at the children. And officially a family. The The celebration continued well into evening, neighbors bringing food and good wishes. Even the Hansons' two boys joined James in excited exploration of the barn loft, forming friendships that would last generations. Sarah helped Martha serve guests with growing confidence, while Rose charmed everyone with her innocent questions and observations. Later, after guests had departed and children slept soundly in their rooms, Martha and Jedediah stood on the porch beneath a canopy of stars. His arm rested comfortably around her waist, warm and secure. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you found us in your stable that night?" Martha asked, leaning against his strength. Jedediah considered the question thoughtfully. "Can't say I did. Was just trying to keep children from freezing to death." His arm tightened around her. "Didn't expect to find my own rescue in the bargain." Martha understood his meaning perfectly. In saving her family, he had saved himself from the isolation that had nearly consumed him after Catherine's death. "Some doors close so others may open," she murmured, echoing wisdom her grandmother had often shared. From inside the house came a small sound, Rose calling sleepily for water. Martha moved automatically to respond, but Jedediah stopped her with a gentle hand. "I'll go," he said. "You've tended them alone long enough. My turn now." As he disappeared inside, Martha remained on the porch, gazing across the land that was now truly their home. In the distance, the North Creek boundary sparkled in moonlight, secure in its rightful place. Beyond it, the vast Dakota Territory stretched toward distant mountains, harsh and beautiful, challenging and rewarding all at once. Like life itself, Martha reflected, and like the unexpected journey that had brought a freezing, desperate widow and her children to the doorstep of a lonely rancher one bitter winter night. Inside, she heard Jedediah's deep voice murmuring comfort to Rose, followed by the child's sleepy giggle. Martha smiled, gathering these precious sounds into her heart like the treasures they were. Some journeys weren't about reaching the destination you'd planned, but about finding the place where your heart finally recognized home. For the Blackwood family, forged in winter's mercy and strengthened through adversity, home was right here. On this land they would defend together through all seasons to come.